Good morning, everyone. This is Carl Griffith from Graybar. I'm the Director of Emerging Technologies at Graybar, and I want to welcome everybody to our G2 Talk webinar this morning. This should be a great session, and I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get started, though, I'd like to make three short announcements. Number one, if you're one of the 50 people that logged into this webinar, the first 50 to log in and stick it out through the session, you're going to get an email for an email gift certificate for a cup of coffee from a major coffee chain in the United States. So watch your email, and if you're one of the first 50, you'll get the certificate and you can exchange it for a cup of coffee. The second thing I wanted to let you know is during this presentation, we encourage questions. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A button. If you'll click that button, a dialog box will open up, and you can type your question in there. At the end of the presentation day, we'll go over those questions and provide you answers to the questions that we can. Those that we can't answer online, we'll be sure to send you an email with an appropriate response and try to address your question. The webinar today, the G2 Talk webinar, will be archived on graybar.com. So if you would like to see it again or see any of the other webinars that we've done throughout the last couple of years, they're available up there in the G2 Talk webinar archive. All you do is go to graybar.com, hit on the G2 Talk logo. You'll see a link to the archive. Go there, and you can download this presentation in a PDF format. You can see the white paper that accompanies this presentation. You can also listen to the presentation, and you can forward it to your friends so that they can see the presentation as well. So the archive's there. So without spending too much more time, I did want to just talk a little bit about Graybar and help you understand what we're all about. Being a distributor of connectivity, it's an important thing for us to understand what we do. Graybar helps our customers power, network, and secure their facilities or their buildings. And we want to do that with speed and intelligence and efficiency. So all we do from a connectivity perspective is around this mission statement of power, network, and secure. Our presenter today is John Short from IBM. Many of you may know John Short. He's the Global Program Manager for IBM in the cabling and connectivity area at IBM. John Short's been in this industry of information technology and information technology services for over 30 years. He's currently the Vice President of APOLAN. That's an acronym, APOLAN, APOLAN. That's the Association for Passive Optical LANs. So part of John's presentation today will be about passive optical LANs and passive optical networks and how they fit into buildings. Many of you may know John. He shows up at various trade events around the country from time to time. He's a great presenter, and he's a great representative of the cabling and connectivity industry. So without holding up this presentation any longer, I'm going to pass the baton on to John Short. Welcome to G2 Talk, John.
Thanks, Carl, and welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to present Smarter Enterprise Connectivity for Next Generation Networks today to everyone. And there'll be a few themes here that we'll be concentrating on. When we talk about smarter solutions, there's kind of three elements that go along with that. There's the intelligence, which talks to the control and management, so you hear about the importance of control and management. There's integration. You'll hear about the importance of integration and convergence of systems and infrastructure. And there's also agility. Hear about the importance of scalable modular building blocks to support these environments. So just quick walkthrough of the agenda today. We're going to start out with some of the demands that customers are seeing from a business perspective and what IT implications and challenges have been developed from those business trends. And then we're going to talk about a new approach using next generation networks with smarter enterprise connectivity. We'll touch on passive optical LAN and the integration of other systems, including DAS. And then we'll talk about what's the real business value of these systems and solutions From an end user experience perspective and also from a CAPEX and OPEX savings standpoint, we'll highlight a few industry examples of applying this solution, and then we'll talk a little bit about where we go from here. So let's get started. What we're seeing today in talking with customers is that the networks of today are really at a tipping point and outdated by the growing business demands that are requiring better access to mobile and cloud services. I'm sure you've all seen this as well, either in your own experiences or talking to your clients. But there's several IT trends that are emerging that are a result of this additional requirement for access to the mobile and cloud services. So we're seeing a great deal of capacity saturation. In fact, by 2015, 80% of the wireless LANs will be outdated according to Gartner. And then there's the mobile devices, the BYOD devices, posing many security threats. I just saw an article again on that yesterday. So customers are wrestling with that. They're also wrestling with how to scale out to support cloud and storage and computing services versus scaling up to their own data centers. And at the same time, how do we do all these things and meet the demands while continuing to drive down cost from a CAPEX and OPEX perspective? And just a few facts there. We have 7.3 billion mobile devices now in the world globally. That's just as many people are in the world. So it's going to continue to grow and grow, and we need a different way of approaching the problem. In fact, a lot of enterprise owners have agreed that there is a problem and admit that their networks designs are really failing to meet these business challenges that we just talked about. The current network designs, as you can see on the chart here, have a large amount of hardware. And this is costly hardware because it has a lot of intelligence built into it, and it requires a lot of energy, a lot of power conditioning, and a lot of cooling. And these networks are typically static, and they also really do a poor job of wireless and mobile support, and in many cases have weak security. And they're also very slow to change, being that it takes sometimes human intervention to change configurations, move ports around, move capacity around, that type of thing. So we need to think differently about how we approach the problem. So we're asking that customers do a paradigm shift to think differently about their network and really to align the network characteristics to the business needs that they're developing in the market. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, we talked about mobility. Now, mobile is really the normal way of accessing the infrastructure. In fact, my daughter's going off to college. She doesn't even know how to plug in an Ethernet port, and I would imagine there's many other people out there that don't know how to do that today, so there's going to be wireless connectivity, and we need a way of better managing those mobile devices. Also, cloud is now going to be the norm. We just saw some statistics on that, where over 50% of the compute capacity is going to be driven by cloud in the future. So we need a better way of managing that and scaling out. And we also need to meet the business cycles with agility, flexibility, and scalability, and be really business essential. And at the same time, we want to be cost conscious and energy conscious and support green operations by becoming energy efficient, reducing CAPEX and OPEX. And then we also want to think differently about how we manage all these devices and this high number of multiple networks out there by rationalizing the connectivity and decreasing the number of networks in the environment. So how do we do this? Well, we do it with a smarter enterprise network, really, that meets the demands of today's mobile and cloud connectivity with an enhanced infrastructure. And so this picture that you see here of a building illustrates that, at least at a high level. The core of this is really a shared fiber infrastructure that supports multiple network services. And when I say multiple network services, I mean, mobile network operators, I mean cloud, wide area networks, and internet access. And the simplification and really convergence of that into a simplified network core through a fiber superhighway, if you will, that supports both IT services and building services in the environment. So from an IT services standpoint, for example, video, voice, and data, BYOD, Wi-Fi, and with building services, maybe security, lighting, as Carl mentioned, HVAC, building management systems, and monitoring and access control. So by simplifying this and converging, integrating, and managing this infrastructure, we're going to drive a tremendous amount of business value. We can provide multiple services with this solution, provide high availability, high density capacity. It's very energy efficient. Because it's using a shared infrastructure, it has enhanced security, the connections are simplified, you have a mobile network neutral infrastructure, has central management and control, and it's easily configurable, and oh, by the way, it reduces your overall CAPEX and OPEX spend. So what are customers telling us and asking us, and why is this important? Well, we see a number of different verticals here, large venues, hospitals, high-rise buildings, universities, and campuses. And each one has some unique considerations in the environments. For stadiums, for example, enhancement of the end-user experience with rich media, and all the mobile and wireless devices being brought into those stadiums that want better access and bandwidth. Also, the stadium owners want to have the ability to utilize the information they're getting from these end users to promote their business. Maybe it's through concessions or other business operations. In hospitals, there's a support requirement for increased number of wireless and wired medical devices, and also, patient monitoring and security. And oh, by the way, patients are bringing their own devices into these hospitals as well, and they expect the connectivity ubiquitously throughout the hospital environment. And then at the same time, there needs to be a high degree of availability. In high-rise buildings, similar things, but many of those owners want to reduce the overall cost, reduce the power consumption, and enhance the space utilization, right? Freeing up more space to provide business operations and revenue generation opportunities. And universities and campuses, pervasive connectivity from building to building throughout the campus. We want to be able to serve multiple buildings and then have connectivity capability over large distances within the radius of the campus environment. And then flexible bandwidth sharing, being able to scale, have the agility to scale the bandwidth based upon the need. So some of the common themes and requirements that we're seeing is really customers are asking for a centralized, simplified management infrastructure that's built on fiber, reduces CAPEX and OPEX, increases the overall security, and is future-proof for growth and has the agility to grow through modular components. So this is where passive optical LAN comes in. Passive optical LAN is the foundation for smarter enterprise networks. and also optimizes wireless and DAS integration. And why is this so? Well, POL meets the enterprise network's requirements through these areas. It simplifies the infrastructure, minimizing the amount of materials and connection points with a central control and management. It's stable, it has a long lifetime, and is future-proof, 25 years or greater, and it's scalable. It can scale out to a 12-mile radius or 20 kilometers and has modular components that are easily replaced and swapped out. And it has a high degree of security. It has built-in physical and control security through encryption and alarm and physical protection. Now, POL has synergies with new enterprise business needs. It meets these needs that are really driving towards more centralized management and control. It also provides a green IT solution that meets LEED requirements, and it also provides a significant cost savings and simplified management of the overall operation. Now, when you combine POL with DAS and wireless, it even optimizes the business value more by leveraging the same POL fiber infrastructure, reducing CAPEX. It also provides better density and greater reach for improved performance and coverage, and it matches the evolution of the modern edge network and mobile applications. And fiber cabling really is one of the most secure means of supporting business-sensitive information. We hear about security breaches every day in the news. This solution has built-in encryption and has a high degree of security and control. So just to give you some fundamentals on passive optical LAN, maybe some of you have seen a chart similar to this before. What we see on the left is a legacy copper-based LAN infrastructure with all the various different components involved, including campus aggregation switches, building switches, edge switches in the communication closets, and then ultimately the end users, along with all the copper and fiber cabling that's required to connect these devices. There's distance limitations of 300 feet, and also it requires resources that you see in the picture to actually go out and configuration, manage, and support those devices. Now, comparing that to passive optical LAN, on the right-hand side of the chart, you see a much more streamlined, simplified approach, minimizing and in fact eliminating the building aggregation switches and the communication closets, and supporting up to 20 kilometers or 12 miles of distance from the main campus aggregation switch, or OLT. So this is a much more streamlined approach, as centralized provisioning and management, all the key characteristics that we just talked about previously that can support the new demands of the business. So, why is the integration so important with passive optical LAN infrastructure? Well, if you recall that one of the themes that I talked about was interconnections or integration of the connectivity. When we bring together IT systems and building systems like video, voice, data, DAS, BYOD, along with access control, monitoring, and lighting control, we're able to really optimize the environment, drive some significant business value. This can be done through a single cabling connectivity infrastructure, providing more efficient pathways and utilization of the space. It also provides better capability to support moves, adds, and changes, and ease of adding new devices and services. But the real business value is it can reduce overall cost. It reduces MAX, for example, by 20 to 35%. Pathway materials are reduced by 40% and labor by 30%, and maintenance costs can be reduced up to 15%. This integration is something that we see customers not always wanting to tackle right away. And I compare it to what we went through with server virtualization maybe 10 years ago, if you recall, where everybody had their own physical server and own physical infrastructure, and they felt comfortable by managing and controlling those physical assets. Well, now with the virtualized infrastructure, it's much more efficient use of the resources. It provides lower support costs, better management, and easier to make changes. And this same evolution, if you will, it will take place in the connectivity and cabling environment as well, as I just mentioned. So with the POL and DAS infrastructure combined, it produces a number of business values. But I just wanted to show you on this picture, kind of how all this might fit together and what it would look like. Starting with the network services on the left, you can support analog voice, packet voice, IP Ethernet data, IP video, RF video, and mobile network operators such as AT&T, Sprint, Verizon. And this can be done through a shared fiber infrastructure. One trunk that carries the fiber strands out to all these devices that you see in the middle, providing desktop connectivity, wireless connectivity, even analog phone connectivity, VoIP connectivity, connectivity to the building automation systems, the cameras, security and surveillance, video conferencing, RF and IP video, and maybe most importantly, smartphones and BYOD devices that are continuously growing. So what are the real business values of all this? Well, the business value is that with POL, it has a positive TCO that helps pay for the DAS infrastructure. Now you put in POL and you can add the DAS for a reduced cost because it leverages the same POL fiber trunk. Clients can manage and operate their own mobile network versus having the carriers manage it. And it supports public and private Wi-Fi. And there's synergies with combining the MDF and IDF fiber management and power backup. Now instead of multiple systems, you can have fewer systems and reduce the overall power consumption and space savings. And in some cases, DAVs can even be a potential revenue generation opportunity for clients. And then public expectations and demands for cellular coverage outside and inside facilities are met. How many times have you gone into a building and you weren't able to get connectivity with your cell phone? Providing a DAS, POL wireless system, you're guaranteed to have connectivity no matter where you are. Okay, so we talked about some of the cost savings. This chart really reflects some of the average cost savings that we've seen with customers and talking to other partners in the industry. From an overall TCO standpoint, with a Smarter Enterprise Network solution, we can save over 30%, in some cases over 60%, depending upon the number of users in the environment and the number of devices, how many networks customers currently have in place, etc. So this is all driven by the reduction of equipment that needs to be procured and the operational savings. From an energy standpoint, you no longer need to have that conditioned power for all the IDF closets and all the environmentals to control the temperature and heat that's produced in those IDF closets. And then from a network upgrade perspective, this is really a future-proof application because you're deploying fiber, which has been tested to support speeds up to terabytes. The only thing you have to replace is electronics at each end of that fiber, but you don't have to rip out that fiber every 7 to 10 years like you do with the copper cabling. So let's take a look at some industry examples here. This one is in particular for healthcare. And this is a healthcare campus where they have the main hospital, where you have your MDF with your POL, OLT system, and the DAS head end. and then you can stretch this out to maybe an ambulatory care center or a therapy center within the campus environment. You don't need any additional electronics in those buildings. You just need the fiber splitters that you see, and you can deliver the network services, internet, cloud, WAN, mobile devices. But some of the key benefits from a healthcare perspective, it provides this capacity with safety in mind. We have dedicated bandwidth for imaging and x-ray systems, for example, and you can support high-density applications like surgery labs with minimized cabling infrastructure, and it also reduces electromagnetic interference that by using fiber versus a copper system. Now, in addition to that, there's a redundancy built in, up to 7 nines of availability, and also we can reduce space, freeing up more space for patient care and revenue generation opportunities in the hospital. From an education standpoint, this can be either higher ed or K through 12. We're seeing a tremendous amount of increase and proliferation of technology in the classroom. It's driving online testing, online assignments. Just about everything is online today in a classroom environment. But this presents some unique challenges where you have to have access and control of that environment, and passive optical LAN and integrated infrastructure can provide that. POL also enables projects that may not have been possible before because of constrained budgets. Maybe some K through 12 or even universities have cut back on their budgets, had planned expansions. Now with smarter network, with reduced CAPEX, they can now afford to do the project. Also, typically there's limited IT staff in educational environments. With POL networks, it can be easily managed and controlled through a central management and provisioning system. And you're able to converge multiple services that are found in these environments, being Wi-Fi, video, voice, data, access to internet and cloud. And you're really able to expand the distance and capability to support satellite educational facilities or other educational facilities in the district up to a 12-mile radius. And it can also support the residential housing, dorm rooms with video, voice, data, and Wi-Fi access. Another industry that this applies very nicely to is the hospitality industry. They're very excited about it because not only does it reduce their costs, but it frees up more space so they can have more rooms in the same footprint of the building. Again, more revenue generation capabilities there. And it can also support the multiple systems that we talked about, and it can provide a high level of service or quality of service to their guests. A lot of us have been in hotel rooms where we haven't been able to get maybe access to the internet, or it's degraded when there's a large number of people on the system at the same time. With the guaranteed bandwidth capability of passive optical LAN, you can guarantee the bandwidth down to the wireless access point, and all those users will have enough bandwidth to access their networks. So now, when we're getting to the point where we're thinking differently and doing a paradigm shift, and this is starting to really evolve beyond the physical integration of the network into the aspect of a software-defined network or software-defined environments. Some of you may have heard about these things. And really, as companies are continuing to embrace cloud networking, wireless networking, and software-defined networks, we're seeing a shift to this centralized, intelligent, and centralized management capability that software-defined networks provide. So what we're suggesting here is that we preserve really what's working, what you see on the left with a physical integration standpoint, with POL, DAS, and Wi-Fi, but then begin to look at the future as we get more devices and the complexity increases. We need a better way of managing and provisioning services through a logical integration with software-defined networks where you have centralized control, secure mobile management, and capacity provisioning. So some of the factors that are driving software-defined networks in the marketplace is really driven by a lot of the mobile devices. Mobility management requires more flexible network control and response. We need to have a simplification and management addressing evolving technologies for mobile and cloud. And cloud services require dynamic provisioning at times, meaning dynamic capacity provisioning for workloads that may shift within the environment. So we're seeing SDN really evolving as a viable delivery model, and PON, or Passive Optical LAN, is a great complementary infrastructure for SDN. Clients are asking for this higher value, and questions that they're driving towards align with Passive Optical LAN and SDN capability. And SDN has a low product cost entry versus having the intelligence in the hardware. We're taking that intelligence out of the hardware, putting it in the software, and reducing the overall cost. And the SDN market is really on a growth path here. It's estimating that it's going to grow from $290 million in 2014 to $3.6 billion in 2019. So it's something that's out there and here to stay. So just to summarize here, kind of where do we go from here, and what can we do to get started? Well, by implementing or considering a smarter enterprise network, you're going to be able to meet the client and control issues that we've talked about, the challenges that cloud and mobility face. The solution meets that challenge. We're going to be able to provide a better end user experience and possibly enable new revenue sources. And we can even help improve the overall cash flow. Not only does POL and DAS reduce the OPEX of the environment, IBM can actually finance these projects through IBM Global Finance to make these projects in some ways self-funding. And we're going to be able to leverage our world-class team that has experience, network consultants and designers, project managers, research engineers. In fact, one of our research engineers is on this call with us today. And we're going to reduce the overall project risk. And I think that's a key point, because as clients look at implementing this technology, and because it's new, there's a certain amount of risk, they can go with a trusted partner like IBM and Graybar to implement these types of projects to minimize the overall risk, because we have deployed these projects already. And we can also accelerate the project timelines to realize a faster return on investment. So if you or one of your clients has an interest in this technology and really wants to see how it can change their environment, provide a better end user experience, and reduce their overall CAPEX and OPEX, IBM can run a TCO tool that was developed by IBM Research to analyze the customer's environment and compare and contrast to a traditional copper Ethernet switch network to a new smarter network, and really see what the difference is for their environment. And here's my contact information, my email address and phone number, and then one of my other global colleagues, Luis Farhalis, providing us technical support. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Carl.
John, thank you very much. An excellent presentation. We have a couple questions that have come in, but before we get to that, I wanted to remind everybody about a couple things. Number one, if you were one of the first 50 people here, we're going to send you the cup of coffee certificate. While we're going through the questions that have already come in, you're welcome to type questions into the system by just using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address your questions. This presentation's archived and will be on graybar.com. Just go to the front of the Graybar homepage, click on the G2 Talk icon, and there's a link there that will take you to the archive. Many of you have typed a question in wanting to know if this presentation will be made available to you. The answer to that is yes. There will be a PDF version of this presentation is at the archive, also a white paper from IBM on this particular subject. John, I wanted to let everybody on the call know that if there are service providers or clients, end user customers on this call, and they would like to be connected together with your team, all they got to do is get in touch with their local Graybar representative, and we'll be more than happy to make that introduction for you and connect you together with the IBM team. I was glad to hear that IBM had a TCO tool, because that's one of the things that people ask about a lot with when it comes to deploying a POL solution, is the cost associated with that from a maintenance perspective and the total cost to own it. So I'm glad to hear that you have that tool. John, I have a couple questions I wanted to ask you. Maybe as people are sending their questions in, maybe this will stimulate a couple other things. You mentioned the biggest challenges you had by industry. I think that was up on slide number 9. Let me move back to that slide and put it up on the screen for everybody to see. In this particular slide, you were talking about this smarter networks in these various different industries. And earlier this year, I was at High Tech in Los Angeles, which is a hospitality show from basically a hospitality convention or conference that had to do with the technical industry of hospitality, primarily from an IT perspective. I was surprised to see the amount of conversation going on at that particular industry event around POL and also around DAS. It almost is like these two are married together, like they need to be deployed together. And it was so exciting to hear that this particular industry, the hospitality industry, has also begun the work to put together a reference guide around deploying POL in this particular vertical of hospitality. I know there's a lot of reasons for that, lots of IP ports in the rooms, and we can replicate very easily room to room and reduce the copper load and all that. I was wondering if you could address that particular vertical, hospitality, and maybe go into a little more detail about some of these verticals and what you've heard from customers about what their needs are and where POL can really, really make a difference in these folks' lives in these verticals.
Sure. Well, I think in the hospitality and any large venue like a stadium or a large public place like a mall or airport, and you know, people are bringing their mobile devices to those areas because they carry them around with them wherever they go. There's an expectation level of an enhanced experience. For example, when you go to a 5-star hotel, you're paying a 5-star price, you're expecting an enhanced experience not only from a connectivity standpoint, but be able to use your device for maybe some services that are being provided by the hotel, for example, or find out where dining is located. Same with the stadiums. You may want to see an instant replay of the play that just occurred, right? Or find out where the nearest concession stand is. So it's really driven by this whole notion of the end user experience. So what's important about this smarter network is the ability to meet that challenge of providing enhanced end user experience by guaranteeing the bandwidth out to the endpoint or to the end user. Right? So if you fill a stadium with 80,000 people, you have to have enough capacity in place to meet that demand. And through this technology and the proper configuration and planning, you can meet that demand with passive optical LAN and passive optical networks with a DAS infrastructure. And I agree that they both go hand in hand, both POL and DAS, because that mobile device is sharing those two connection points, and that device doesn't care if it's going through the mobile network operator or for the wireless. The end user doesn't care. They just want connectivity, and we have to provide them that connectivity on a high quality level.
Thank you. I've noticed that in the DAS world, we see one vendor in particular, and maybe a couple other moving in that direction, where the connectivity to the RAU, or the remote antenna unit inside these buildings, actually has Ethernet connectivity at the very end of the RAU, and these are fiber-built DAS infrastructure that lends itself to deploy both PON and DAS together, so you don't have to rip the walls up or rip the ceiling up more than once. You can deploy both technologies at the same time, which ultimately can reduce the cost. So this is fairly interesting to me, and I hope to the people that are on the line. The other question that we have is about this software-defined network, and I'm wanting to make sure everybody kind of understands a little bit about what software-defined networks are. I kind of think of this as less emphasis on the network and more emphasis on the application. So we reduce the amount of items that we need in order to manage the network on the operating system side, and we're providing more application stuff on the. Is that kind of what software-defined networks are, or can you maybe give us a 101 primer on SDN?
Sure, and I'll just give a high-level overview here, but really what it's all about is, like you mentioned, the ability to manage this complex environment in a streamlined and simplified manner over multiple different protocols and infrastructure, and then having the flexibility to make changes to that environment, the agility aspect that we talked about before. So for example, maybe in the future you'll be able to provision or shift capacity on the fly, if you will. You can do that to some degree today with passive optical LAN and some of the DAS systems that are in place, but also fast provisioning of security and firewalls, or as people move from one part of the venue to another part, from outside to inside, shifting capacity around. Those are just some examples of things that ultimately you'll be able to do with software-defined networks, right? And so it really, again, boils down to simplification of the management and the flexibility and agility to deliver the service where it's needed, when it's needed, and while at the same time reducing the amount of infrastructure and manual intervention that's involved.
Thank you. Kim asked a question that's come in about PoE, power over Ethernet, and we know that there are many endpoints that require power to operate, whether it be a voice over IP telephone or whether it be an access point or an IP camera. If we have an optical non-conductive connectivity network here, how do we handle the PoE on these end devices?
Sure. So there's something at the edge called an ONT, or optical network terminal, that has power that's part of that optical network terminal. And so the power from that optical network terminal is then routed through low voltage cabling out to the devices that require the PoE.
Great. And how many ports can an ONT have?
It really, varies by the application. There's some that may only have 1 or 2 ports. A common is 4 ports that would be in a workgroup area. And there's also rack-mounted ONTs that, if the customer chooses to put in a closet, there's 24-port rack-mounted ONTs that you would then distribute the signal through a traditional copper wiring.
We have a couple people online that have asked us, I guess the names aren't important here, but the 2 people have asked about case studies. Does IBM have a case study prepared where they've actually deployed POL in a particular vertical?
Yes, we have. We do have case studies. We don't make those, available, publicly typically, but if there's some specific questions that I could answer, I could try.
All right. Well, one person in particular has an opportunity for PON right now, and the client's a little reluctant to pull the trigger until they can find somebody else that they can talk to that's already deployed it. So you and I offline will identify that opportunity, and I'll get it to you so we can get this integrator up and running with a POL solution for their particular vertical. So we'll handle that one offline. Another question came in about the white paper from IBM. It'll be posted on the archive along with the presentation. That's all the questions I have. One more. Christopher asked about 7 nines when the slide said 5 nines. What is it, John? How much reliability do we really have here? Is there really a such thing as 7 nines?
Well, I think there may have been a typo there, but typically with a traditional a traditional copper switch network is 5 nines of availability. With passive optical LANs, the passive optical LAN infrastructure is engineered for 7 nines availability.
Great. Perfect. John, I want to thank you for the time that you spent with us today. It's been a great presentation, very informative. I hope the people that attended it are as excited about the opportunities before us with POL as I am. Remember to look in your email for your coffee certificate. Remember that we have this all archived up on graybar.com. We'll have some more G2 Talk webinars as we go throughout the rest of the year. So thanks everybody for attending. Thank you, John, and have a wonderful day.